Well, that might be the end of the Joshua Zirkzee saga to AC Milan, as latest reports suggest that Manchester United have decided to trigger his release clause as well. Milan themselves have received a lucrative offer for starman Rafael Leao. The latest news is that Adrien Rabiot has decided to reject Juventus' renewal offer, and some suggest that Milan are considering swooping in. And if not Zirkzee, then who? Artem Dovbyk, Santiago, Giménez? These are some of the profiles we're going to be looking at in today's episode of Rumor or Real. Oh, the Joshua Zirkzee saga might finally be coming to an end. How many times last season did this happen, guys? We were linked to certain players for the entirety of the Mercato at times, and at the end, that player decided to go to some other club. This time around, when the rumors of Joshua Zirkzee started to roll around, I had a similar feeling. I didn't know if this deal is actually going to go through. The price tag was too high. The profile was too big. At some point in time, there was a risk of another club kind of swooping in. In the last video, we talked about how Fabrizio Romano had mentioned that Manchester United had not actually made an offer, weren't necessarily considering Zirkzee, but they had inquired with Bologna. They had had a conversation with Bologna to understand how the release clause exactly works. You know, what's the exact amount? Is there a time window in which that has to be triggered? But they hadn't actually done anything concrete with that. Now, latest reports are suggesting Manchester United will be triggering that release clause. That means they'll be triggering that 40 million euro price tag, and with the financial strength that a club like Manchester United has, they are not as bothered by Kia Joorabchian's 15 million commission requirement. They'll probably have a slightly easier time paying that off. When it comes to Milan themselves, there have been reports that suggest that Milan had already informed Bologna that they were willing to trigger that 40 million release clause. They had apparently also had found an agreement with Zirkzee himself for personal terms. The only aspect that was missing was a 15 million commission that was to be paid out. Some reports suggest that Milan was ready to pay somewhere around that 8 million mark. They didn't want to go any higher. And Joorabchian's side looked like might initially find an agreement around 10 million, but eventually was reported that they're not budging from their price tag. They want that 15 million commission. Now, there has been some discussion amongst the fan base. Obviously, the journalists are going crazy because this is essentially dragging on and on. So it gives more time and space for people to kind of fill in the silences. There have been journalists that have been talking about how it's Joshua Zirkzee who's actually stalling this deal. It's not exactly coming from the agent. As I talked about in the last video, agents are supposed to be the ones who construct the bridge between two parties to find an agreement. But in this case, with Milan ready to pay that release clause, finding an agreement with the player himself, it seemed like the agent was actually breaking that bridge, not actually building it. And if the player truly wants to make that move to Milan, they would actually expedite that process. They would push for it. And the fact that it hasn't been done till now means that that decision at the end of the day is likely coming from Zirkzee himself. Ibrahimovic also came out in that press conference, was a little bit more aggressive, talked about Milan doesn't do charity, the numbers have to make sense. I can't imagine agents who do have, a tendency to have, high self-esteem and a bit of an ego. I don't think that comment would necessarily have gone well with the agent himself. Now, there were some reports coming out yesterday that Milan, in order to get this deal across the line, had actually thrown in Jordan Zirkzee, who's the younger brother of Joshua Zirkzee, who plays, I believe, at Bayern Leverkusen. He's in his final year of his contract, so he's going to be a free agent within a few weeks, and this has happened in the past with the club. The oldest time that I can remember was when Kaká was brought on along with his brother Leao, and recently, much more recently, we saw what happened with Antonio Donnarumma. Milan was trying to renew Gianluigi Donnarumma under the Mirabelli Fasone time, and they decided to bring on Antonio Donnarumma, pay him 1 million a season just to sort of sweeten that deal and make sure the Donnarumma family makes a lot of money. So this is not unusual. And this time around, Milan have made that same offer to Joshua Zirkzee to sign his brother Jordan Zirkzee. It was just the agent commissions that were missing. And that little period of time has allowed someone like Manchester United to swoop in and potentially inform Bologna that they also will be triggering that release clause. Now, the question becomes, how real is this? Is there actually the possibility of this happening? Is he truly slipping out of Milan's hands? Or is this just one of those news rumors, maybe even leaked by his entourage to push Milan to expedite the process and actually just pay up that commission and get the deal done? From the reports that I'm reading at the time of recording this video, Fabrizio Romano, Nicolo Schira, Gianluca Di Marzio, none of the major guys have actually confirmed this. It has apparently come from Corriere dello Sport, but at this point in time, it hasn't quite come from one of the top journalists. However, Romano had confirmed that Manchester United was in conversation with Bologna, so at this point in time, I think the report of Zirkzee heading to Manchester United, to me, it seems possible. Højlund had a decent season, but Zirkzee would be an excellent addition. And for a club that's overpaid on attackers time and time again, paying 80 million on Antony, getting a player of the quality of Zirkzee for 34 million pounds or 40 million euros, I think that would be a pretty good move for them. Now, the possibility of Zirkzee actually coming to Milan at this point in time, guys, keeping everything in mind, seeing how long this is taking, seeing what commissions Milan has paid in the recent past for decent transfers, just look at that. That's the max that Milan has paid, 2.9 million for Paqueta, 2.8 million most recently for Charles de Ketelaere. Do I really think that Milan's actually going to pay that 15 million for the agent? I don't think so, guys, and that's why at this point in time, Zirkzee to Milan move, for me, I'm going to stamp this as unlikely now. And if Milan walks away from this deal for that reason, I actually don't mind that decision made by the management, because seeing some of the other attacking profiles we have available to us, especially one of the players that we're going to discuss at the end of the video, I don't really mind losing out on Zirkzee as long as Zirkzee goes to the Premier League, plays for Manchester United, and doesn't go to a direct competitor of Milan like going to Inter or going to Juventus. I'm okay with that. And you guys let me know in the comment section, if Milan loses out on Joshua Zirkzee or this 15 million commission payment, are you going to be okay with that? Which brings us to the French midfielder, Juventus's French midfielder, and Adrien Rabiot. Before the beginning of the last season, Rabiot, for some reason, actually for a very clear reason, decided to renew his contract with Juventus, but only for 1 year. The reason why it is reported that he did make that extension was because he wanted to solidify his spot in the Euro 2024. If he decided to go to a new club and he didn't assimilate properly there, he didn't get enough play time, it would have jeopardized his chance at playing in these Euros, and France at the end of the day are one of the favorites to win the entire tournament. So in order to not risk that position, he decided to take a 1-year renewal at a club that he's been at and gets regular play time. Now, some reports are suggesting that Juventus made an offer for 7 million euros for this player, and apparently latest reports suggest that he has rejected that offer. Some news outlets are saying that Milan have had multiple conversations with his agent, with his mom, and a couple of them even said that Milan have tabled an offer for 7.5 million euros for this player. Now, the beginning part, everything sounds fine. Milan does need a central midfielder. He is a player who's familiar with Serie A. He is a free agent, so it's not going to cost any transfer money. And the fact that his agent is his mom, unlike Zirkzee, I don't think she, wants to jeopardize his move by asking for big commissions. Now, the problem comes with that report suggesting that Milan are ready to pay 7.5 million euros, because that's where this report starts to make less and less sense to me. Look, guys, at this point in time, Rafael Leao is the highest paid player on this team. He gets paid 7 million. Nobody makes more than him. If somehow you bring in Adrien Rabiot and offer him more than Leao, that's going to create a whole imbalance in the hierarchy of what players are where. You have somebody like Theo Hernandez who's making somewhere around 4 and 5 million. You have somebody like Mike Mignon who's making even less than that, demanding better salaries. If you sign Adrien Rabiot at 7.5 million, you're going to have to pay those guys a lot more than you expect. Because if you value a new guy at that level, all these other star players that have served you for seasons, won you titles, they're going to be asking for better salaries as well. So to me, at this point in time, this move would make a lot of sense. It would be very helpful for Milan to have a central midfielder who has a quality like Rabiot and has the experience of playing in Serie A season after season. But this price tag of 7.5 million salary, this makes the whole report to me at this point in time, guys, very likely just a rumor. Which brings us to this 100 million offer received for Rafael Leao from Al Hilal. Milan does have a 175 million release clause on this player. If an offer is coming from Saudi Arabia, if it's not coming from a European club, but it's coming from Saudi Arabia, Milan will likely demand that entire amount because they know that those clubs can pay that money. So first of all, we have a problem at the 100 million evaluation for the player. But secondly, and the most important part, is that at this age with Rafael Leao, where he is in his career, at this point in time, it's obvious for all of us watching that Rafael Leao would never agree to this move. Milan also understands that. They're not even going to ask Leao to consider this like they asked Sandro Tonali last season to consider Newcastle's offer. So quick and simple, the possibility of Rafael Leao going to Al Hilal, making a move to Saudi Arabia at this age, it's not possible. It's easy for me to say it's just a rumor. I mean, maybe Milan did receive the offer, but that's just not going to happen. Now, if not Joshua Zirkzee, then who? The one profile that Milan has consistently been linked with, maybe even a couple seasons ago, is Santiago Giménez. The 23-year-old scored 26 goals last season for Feyenoord, and this is the same club. Milan apparently is already in touch with this club for their player in Mats Wiefer. So this might be a double swoop for Milan for these Feyenoord players. Now, one part to take note of is the fact that Milan was last linked with this player. In that season, he had scored 15 goals for this club. This time around, he scored 23 goals. So clearly, even in a smaller Dutch league, he's still growing in his numbers. And if you look at his performances in Europe, last season, he scored 3 goals in Europe. And coincidentally, all 3 of those goals came against Serie A clubs in Lazio and Roma. The season before that, he scored 5 goals in the Europa League. 3 of them, again, came against Lazio. So when it comes to this guy's finishing ability, I guess we could say that he could score goals against Serie A sides. At least he can definitely score goals against Lazio for some reason. His report reported price tag is said to be around 50 million euros. According to some reports, Milan have had a few conversations with Feyenoord about this player. Will a deal at 50 million euros actually get done? If you look at it, Zirkzee was going to cost Milan 40 million euros. The agent's commission was 15 million. That would have brought the deal to about 55. Do I really think Milan's going to drop out on Zirkzee at 55 and go for Santiago Giménez at 50? I don't really think so, because that's a small difference for a much more proven player in Serie A. So for me, I think I can see this deal actually happening only if that price tag is reduced from 50 million somewhere closer to that 40 million euro mark. At this point in time, Giménez making a move to Milan, I guess with the Zirkzee deal getting all complicated, I guess it's possible. This is one of the backup profiles that Milan has considered, but I think everything essentially depends on what happens with the Zirkzee deal, and then we'll know what happens with the Giménez deal. And then there's a profile of Artem Dovbyk. Now, I asked a few times, if not Zirkzee, then who? To me, he's who. If Milan can bring on Zirkzee, I think this is the player they have to go for. Dovbyk plays in a much more difficult league in La Liga. Last season, he scored 26 goals in that league, assisted 10 goals. He scored multiple goals against teams like Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and in a essentially wild season for his club Girona. I mean, he was a key piece in his team finishing in the top 3 ahead of Atletico Madrid, 4 points behind Barcelona. Eventually they finished 3rd, but at one point in time, till about 22 match days, they were sitting in 1st place thanks to Artem Dovbyk's goals. With his 26 goals, he was the highest goal scorer in all of La Liga, and let's not forget the Ukrainian connection. I mean, Milan had a legend in Adrien. He's the 2nd highest goal scorer in the history of the club. And to be honest, everything that I watched about this player online, I absolutely loved. The guy's got excellent close control, something we've been crying out after Olivier Giroud. He has quality finishing. He's truly deceptive in the box at times, got the tricks and flicks and everything. If Zirkzee had 12 goals and 7 assists, Artem Dovbyk in a tough league in La Liga had 26 goals and 10 assists. And he's done this now consistently, while Zirkzee had, at the end of the day, one really good season with Bologna. The report is that Dovbyk's release clause is the exact same as Zirkzee at 40 million euros. So at the end of the day, if Milan does lose out on Joshua, I think they have a really good center forward available in this player. Artem Dovbyk to Milan, I think it is possible. I hope it becomes real, and this is the player we eventually start to go for. But at this point in time, keeping his stats in mind, keeping his release clause in mind, matching up to that of Zirkzee, I think this is a possible deal. Well, there you have it. Those are some of the profiles we want to take a look at today. At the end of the day, I think the message is that if Milan does lose out on Joshua Zirkzee, there's no need to stress. There are a lot of other good profiles that are available. And if I could get into the ears of Milan's management, I would ask them to strongly consider Artem Dovbyk instead of maybe even Joshua Zirkzee. And now you guys let me know in the comment section, Joshua Zirkzee, Santiago Giménez, Artem Dovbyk. Of these 3 players, keeping in mind their price tags, their stats, their agents' requirements, which one do you want coming to Milan? And from my side, as always, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti.